crisis continues beyond the headlines, a day after President Tinubu paid a visit to the state that has long been plagued by insecurity, displacement and grief. Yesterday, the president touched down at the Tactical Air Command base in Makurdi, made his way to the Benue State University Teaching Hospital to visit survivors of the recent brutal attack in Yawauta, that's Guma local government area. A chilling reminder of the violence that continues to destabilize local communities. He then proceeded to the town hall meeting with some stakeholders promising decisive federal intervention. But beyond promises and presidential empathy, many Benue residents are asking, will anything really change? And it's also a big question on the show today. Today we've got Oyekachi Adekoya, an expert in security and risk management, joining us for some development in Benue as we continue to cover this story very closely. He helps us to dissect the fallout and policy responses from that town hall meeting yesterday with Mr. President in Makurdi. The gathering brought renewed attention to the brutal Yawauta attack, which claimed over 150 lives, largely attributed to herdsmen violence. Mr. Adekoya, thank you for joining us on the program. Yesterday, President Tinubu called on security agencies to make arrests quickly. From your standpoint, is this posturing or part of a deeper shift towards intelligence-led operations in that state?
Okay, good evening, Nifemi, and good evening to the viewers. I think you've asked a lot of questions in one simple statement. One, if it's posturing. Two, if we are now going to see intelligence-led operations. I think I'll start from the later. I always argue that we do not have an intelligence problem. We have rather a logistics problem. So if you have intelligence and you cannot take action, or you have actionable intelligence and you cannot act based on what you have, then you have almost nothing. I always like to remind Nigerians that the DSS has a station chief in every local government in this country, and we have several as of the four. So we have our imprint. The police has its intelligence bureau. Same thing for the customs, same thing for the immigration, same thing for the NSCDC. We do not lack intelligence. We lack the on-ground, near-action capability to address these issues. Now, to the question on whether or not the president is posturing, Mr. President would not be the last president, as it were, and is neither the first that will make such sweeping statements. Time it was in this country when a presidential directive was given to an IG, only for the president to find out some days later that the IG never even left Abuja. So what would change on the ground? Nothing. Nothing will change immediately, because for a country the size of Nigeria and the size of our bureaucracy, it takes a lot to shift certain things. So how do you implement this presidential directive? Where is the budget going to come from? You need to make some requests, personnel equipment. Those requests must be approved. You need to draw personnel from different formations. You want to set up a joint task force. These things take time. In the time while the law enforcement is posturing, you still have the local on-the-ground gaps. And what worries me a bit, Nifemi, is the discordant tune that seems to be coming from the state government itself, that doesn't seem, as it were, to have a clear internal security strategy for Benue. I think that's a bigger problem.
Talking about the state government, we had yet another renewed advocacy for state or community policing. There are conversations about how realistic and fast-acting such mechanisms would be in a state like Benue, and what steps are needed to really operationalize them. But in the past interviews we've had with you on this show, you've criticized governors for not leading security responses. What role should Governor Alia play now alongside federal agencies to ensure a cohesive, evidence-based security plan?
Well, I don't like to give advice for free to the governor. I understand that he has
But
He has a
you
retinue.
also have to be
Yeah,
patriotic, right?
I'm very patriotic, and that's why I always, I mean, the work stops at the table of the governor. In the first instance, yes, the president is the father of the nation, and where a tragedy like this has happened, yes, the president may have visited, made statements, and left. The town hall was a bit, for me, the optics was not good. So does it now mean that every time a state fails in its own internal security program, the president must visit every location? And I do not make light the deaths and the carnage that has occurred. But I mean, is it, where do we start from? There's Niger, there's Plateau, there's Adamawa, there's even Zamfara. These numbers are what we see every day. So how many locations can the president visit as one man? As to what the governor can do, I would advise the governor to perhaps call his colleague governor in Zamfara. Now, the Zamfara has a local community protection corps. Benue has the Benue Civil Protection Corps. Uh, then Governor Yeson Wike said he's not the chief security officer, but he's the chief logistics officer. And that's a very true statement. The role of the governor is to provide the law enforcement the requisite resources, the tool, the leadership, on-ground leadership for them to get their job done. Let me make this point why the governors play a very significant role. I'll cast our minds back to 2018, sometime in Rivers. I don't know if you recall this Icelander called Group and one certain leader called Don Wani. The New Year Day attack. What did Governor Wike do? What he did was to aggregate a list of all the trouble heads he had in River State, and using state laws and apparatus, declare these persons wanted and launch a manhunt for them. What did that do for law enforcement? It gave the law enforcement the tool, requisite tool, for them to go on a decisive manhunt. What happened in River State? We saw that law enforcement rounded up these people. You know, there was some gone well, and that matter was dealt with decisively. This is 2025, even in the midst of the political crisis in River State. We've not seen the type of carnage we're seeing in 2017, 2018, particularly in Omoku and those areas, just because a governor took decisive action. So Governor Father, as they call him in Benue, he has all the latitude of law. He has the resources of the state at his disposal. More importantly, he has the security votes. Nifemi, there are state governors in this country today, as we have had in time past, that do not listen to the advice of the different security chiefs they have employed to them. There are state governors that were not clear as to what they are doing with the security votes. The case of Zamfara, it is on record that he bought about 141 or 147 vehicles for the security forces. What is the logistical deployment in Benue? You can ask the question. The next question is, in terms of motivation, how much are the Civil Protection Corps of the Benue State government being paid a month? What is the level of training and armament they are getting? What operational visibility assets do they have to be able to do the work they need to do in the community? So the real thing is, it's the governor has to be a bit more hands-on on the ground. If he does that, he can then fall back to the federal forces, and they will now act as a force multiplier to whatever the government is doing.
I hear you, Mr. Adekoya, but there's also the Justice Vacuum fueling insecurity. Yesterday's town hall spotlighted victims demanding judicial action. We'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll explore this angle as we continue to probe further development in Benue. Stay with us, everyone. not just of the perpetrators, but indeed of the sponsors. Precisely what structural reforms are most critical to counter impunity in this regard?
Nifemi, you are now going to the challenges we have with our criminal justice system. Do we have enough judges? Does the judiciary have enough resources, as it were? We've heard complaints about the judges having too much to do and having too little hands to do the work with. I don't want to be drawn into, yes, it's part of security, because if you have poor consequence management in a society, consequence management in the sense of if the law says A, B, C, D, and there are several infractions, and decisive action is not taken, that in itself is a call to anarchy. Again, just to buttress the point that if the incentive to crime is high and the reward is high, as against the consequence being high, then you create a self-reinforcing loop. So again, I come back to what can be done by the state government. Laws. The state government can enact laws, and through those laws, they can empower certain state agencies. For example, the Benue State Civil Protection Corps. What is the governing law? What are the rights and privileges and responsibilities assigned to them by law? Again, on the issue of law, let me remind Nigerians that President Buhari then wanted to and was pushing for the rework of the current police structure to have state police. It was the political class embodied by the governors who pushed back. Their claim was that there was no budget. Today, there is budget. Subsidy has been removed. The National Assembly is in support of state police creation. The Nigerian Governors Forum is in support of state police creation. A time it was said that the northern governors did not want state police and they were the one pushing against. We've seen, at least in the last 5 years, the Northern Governors Forum come out on 3 occasions to say they support the creation of state police. The current presidency also is an advocate for more autonomy to subnational governments. At least in Lagos State, he did try and set up something similar to a state security structure. Now, the question is, what is stopping us? If the legislative arm and the executive arm are in sync, what is stopping either the president from sponsoring an executive bill or any of the state governors to have their own senators or rep push this through? So again, the law perhaps has to be reworked. Again, on law, we need to have a bit more clarity because we are now over-militarizing our security architecture. I hate to use the word architecture because we seemingly have a disjointed structure. The law as is allows the military to have a bit of an omnibus kind of responsibility when you say they can be called into internal security. The presidency had an engagement with the North Central Stakeholders Forum, and the person that was invited that piqued me a bit was the Chief of Defense Staff. The Chief of Defense Staff is at the highest level of the military spectrum we have in the country. He's not a subject matter expert in internal security. We should have the police lead these conversations. Why is it important? The police are able to embed within society. The police can take a more civil enforcement approach. The police are also civilians, drawn from the civilian populace, to also ensure law and order. So the police is better suited. When you deploy the military, the first thing the military wants to do is to secure their perimeter. So they will create physical barriers, maybe they dig ditches, create chicanes, sandbags. The military posture is not such that creates an embedment in society. So the military will always be chasing the issues.
All right.
When was the last time we as a country, decisively retooled the Nigerian police? I'll round up on this point. The Air Force has been significantly upgraded. The Navy has been significantly upgraded. The Nigerian Army has seen some, maybe you can now contest because of battle damage, some investments. But in the last 30 years, what has been the national policing strategy to retool and equip Nigerian police for the 21st century policing? So there's a number of gaps that we have that are a bit structural. But on the issue at hand with the states, we need to look more towards the subnational government and the local government chairman, and to look at the strategies they are running, whether or not it is working. We can assess on a state-by-state basis.
Interestingly, I had the former spokesperson of the Defense Headquarters, General Olukolade, on the show yesterday, and he categorically stated that lack of political will is perhaps what is massively influencing the continued killings in Benue. I'm sure you are aware that certain political stakeholders are now under pressure to close ranks with the state government and cooperate in the interest of peace and development, which has been a major talking point. I've also had the privilege of speaking a couple of times with the governor himself, who did not shy away from the potential of sabotage in the mix of all that's happening in Benue State. How do you place all of this? Do you think that Mr. President needs to be more decisive in calling the actors in this regard to order, or you don't think that is significant to the ongoing onslaught?
No, firstly, I beg to disagree with those who think that these issues are the issues for the presidency. Yes, the president is the father of the nation, responsible for everybody. But again, it's a sing-song for me. The state government should lead the efforts. That is clear. In terms of the political will and the statement from the Nigerian military spokesperson, I agree that we are prone to quick fixes. We always want to wave a magic wand in Nigeria for our problems to go away. So when there is insecurity occasioned by poor investment in the policing structure, we quickly call in the military as a reserve force to come in, conduct a surgical operation and go away. And what you find is that it's either the problem goes to another place and manifests bigger, or another thing happens. So what you find is politicians make statements upon statements, you set up operations upon operations, but we are unable to deal with the root issues. The root issues, I agree, is with the political will to be very conclusive. In Benue State, when the governor said that there are certain political actors, I want to believe that the governor has some facts. Conduct likely to breach peace or even conduct breaching peace is a criminal felony. Where the governor has these facts, then he can bring an action, the state can bring an action against these politicians and let them have their day in court. But to make mere statements doesn't show the will and the grit that is required to confront this issue head on. The governor may also need to learn respectfully from Governor Babagana Zulum. I saw the town hall meeting they had with another station, and you could hear, if you also watch the press party by the Zamfara state government, even though insecurity has worsened in Zamfara, you can see a governor who is hands-on, working on addressing the issue. The contrast in the statements coming out from the Benue governor baffles me a bit. So it is part of our quick fix mentality to say the president needs to do something. Unfortunately, the statements and the directives of the president will not change much on the ground. We have seen several. In my lifetime, I may have lost count of presidential directives and statements that does nothing. Nifemi, 2027 is coming up. There's a possibility that there will be a sustained uptick in crime and criminality. Presidential directives are like palliative measure. They do not go to the heart of the issue.
Precisely, Mr. Adekoya, are you saying that you aren't optimistic the town hall has set in motion a sustained security reform? Are we seeing headlines flash and perhaps not much of concrete policy following?
Nifemi, then Minister of Information and Culture, I think, Lai Mohammed, under his office, had several community engagement meetings across the country, stakeholders engagements. We've had several committee upon committee, white papers upon white papers. Let's cut through the chase. What does a presidential directive mean in its true form?
Okay.
In its true form, it's not. That's not an act of parliament. It's a statement given by the president
I hear you.
the service chiefs
I hear you,
to
Mr.
do
Adekoya.
what they are mandated
Yes.
by the Constitution to do. They don't need a presidential directive to get that job done.
I hear you clearly. We have to go now, but what's your direct advice to everyday Benue citizen watching today? What should they expect next week, next month, and even in the longer term?
Well, my advice to every Nigerian is that when we have internal insecurity issues in the states, please, the people have a right to protest. Hold your state governors responsible. Hold your local government chairmen responsible. This pointing hands conveniently at Abuja, saying that, the president has control. It is not true. The president has control, yes, but the governors through the State Security Council have command. They do not only have command, they have a security vote and they have budgets.
All right.
So the governors are first the chief security officers of the state. So to Benue people, look to the governor. 2, work with law enforcement. 3, the right of self-defense is enshrined in our constitution. However, it must be done under the ambit of the law. The local government chairman can organize their people into smallhold community vigilante groups, provide resources. What are the resources they need? People are keeping the watch. They would need some refreshments. They will need some cola nuts, bitter cola. They may need bean guns. They may need ammunition. Create this grouping. Work with the local monarch. Do not abandon it to your security advisor.
Mr. Ikachi,
let the governors have a once a month check-in meeting.
We have completely run out of time. You ended up doing more consulting that you were willing to do earlier, even though you are not paid for it. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Adekoya is an expert in security and risk management who's joined us on Beyond the Headlines. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.